Welcome. Great to see so many familiar faces, but even better to see a whole bunch of new faces here today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Michael Leister. I'm the State Crisis Intervention Program Manager at the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, formerly Reentry Coordinator. You actually have the privilege of having the only 3 Reentry Coordinators in PCCD history here today. Miss Charlotte Plains, number 1, myself, number 2, and Miss Angi Crater, number 3. So come pick our brains, come say hello, get cards. I don't know what I did to make someone mad that they put me on after Eric Van Zant. Not only is that guy a great speaker, but holy hell, is he good looking. It's just sad to know that I'll only ever be the second best looking guy in Reentry. I'm going to be quick today, though, because we have a great group of panelists to talk about the work that they're doing at the county level. But really, first, just wanted to give a brief overview of Reentry and some of the stuff we're doing at PCCD and have done in the past. So as you know, at PCCD, we started supporting Reentry coalitions back in 2011. Back in 2019, we decided it'd be beneficial for everyone to develop some guidelines for coalitions. So we put together what we now refer to as the Reentry Coalition Minimum Operating Standards. So just by show of hands here, who's read those minimum operating standards before? Not bad. I wrote the document, so I'd prefer that if it was a lot more people. It's really well written, so I'd encourage you to take a look. But really at the heart, those minimum operating standards kind of serve as a guiding light for what coalitions should do. Useful for new coalitions, also for coalitions who are existing. But when we developed those, we worked with 6 coalitions from across the Commonwealth and really focused on 4 areas. So the first one is membership, ensuring that there's diverse membership for the coalition. Also ensuring that folks with lived experience are not only at the table, but are decision makers. And the minimum operating standards kind of outline who should be at that table. So again, first, folks with lived experience, government entities, and really our community providers. And again, that document has a full list of recommended folks who should be at the table, so I encourage you to take a look. The second piece of the minimum operating standards is a coalition should have bylaws of some sort. Those should talk about the leadership structure, who votes, how often you meet, things of those nature. The third piece is that the coalition should have or be working towards a reentry strategic plan. So the strategic plan is really the guiding light for the coalition and what they're going to be focusing on for a 4 to 5 year period. And then the last piece focuses on recidivism data collection. So with that, we encourage all coalitions to ensure that within their county jail or in probation that they are collecting 5 key data points that are essential to calculating recidivism. Those are, wow, it's been 4 years since I wrote these. Let me see if I can remember. Name, date of birth, offender tracking number, the state identification number, and the release date. So those are the 4 key data components of calculating recidivism. And there are some other data that we encourage folks to capture and look at. But again, really just want to ensure that across Pennsylvania, everyone's collecting that baseline data. So we put these minimum operating standards in place back in 2020, March of 2020, right as COVID hit. So as you can imagine, there was a great rollout there. But we are now up to 15 or so counties who are meeting the minimum operating standards, which we're excited about. We want to keep growing that. And we also want to expand those standards at some point. So keep an eye out for that. Again, we have a great panel today, so I'm not going to bore you too much. I'll pass it off to my right hand, Ms. Angi Crater.
I'm not quite as tall as Michael, so good morning, everybody. I'm Angi Crater, the current reentry coordinator at PCCD. During the park planning session meetings, we kind of went back and forth on what we wanted this session to look like, and we kind of figured it would be a little more exciting to have some counties come up and talk about what they're doing than rather than just have Michael and myself go over the minimum operating standards ad nauseum. So we decided to reach out to some counties that are doing some great work, and today we are going to hear from Miss Kierra Nocho. She's representing Philadelphia County, one of the longest running coalitions, obviously the largest county in the state as well, and they're doing some new and exciting things, so she's going to get to tell us all about what they're doing in Philadelphia. We also have Alissa McBride from Montgomery County. Montgomery County recently received a recertification in meeting minimum operating standards, and they're kind of one of our gold star counties with that. So Alissa's here to give us a little bit more information about what they're doing. We have Steve Guccini from Pike County. Pike is really representing a lot of Pennsylvania, smaller counties that have a little bit less resources available than those with larger cities in it. So Steve's going to tell us a little bit about how to run a successful coalition in a more rural, smaller county. And last but not least, we have Laura Kuykendall from Lehigh County. Lehigh is obviously a larger county, but one that just recently went through the process of standing up a coalition, doing the strategic planning, going through that process. So Laura's going to tell us a little bit more about that. So without further ado, Kierra, I'm going to pass it over to you. And I'm going to try to walk off this stage as well.
I'm going to grab my laptop really quickly. Just want to grab my laptop. One second. Good morning, everyone. As stated, my name is Kierra Nocho. I'm here representing the Philadelphia Reentry Coalition. And so I'm just going to give a brief overview of some of our history and talking about where we are now and some of the new things that we are doing. Okay, so as we all know, the coalition is meant to be a collaboration of different entities here working in reentry. And so as Mike said, here at Philadelphia, we have a collection of organizations. We have criminal justice agencies represented from the federal, state, and city level. The PRC itself is a representation of the city of Philadelphia. We are now under the Office of Reentry Partnerships. We also have community-based organizations that work within reentry. We have returning citizens. And all of us come together to collaborate and strengthen the services here in Philadelphia. So the goal overall for the Reentry Coalition is that to bring agencies together and organizations to work on reentry in Philadelphia and collectively reduce recidivism. This iteration specifically wants to put a focus on youth services, women's services, and grassroots organizations. So a little bit of history. The coalition in Philadelphia formed in February 2012. It started off as what they call CJAB, which is a Criminal Justice Advisory Board. A collection of federal, state, and county agencies came together and decided, okay, we need to strengthen the reentry services here in Philadelphia, so they all merged together to form this coalition. Some of the things that they did since its inception in February 2012 up until September 2015 was increasing membership from those 20 starting members to 100 members total. They were able to pilot a document called Home for Good, which is a 5-year strategic plan. Can I take this off? There we go. It is a 5-year strategic plan in which they documented evidence-based theories to strengthen reentry. They did data collection, and they came up with a plan, came up with, again, theories to pilot the reentry services here in Philadelphia. So we took that model, it continued to grow. They later on launched, as Mike said, another requirement, a study on recidivism shortly later in that year. And then they continued on up until August. And this was in 2019. They began to do surveys to the service providers that were in the coalition to collect more information about the services that they were given, the demographics, and created what they called a landscape document. And it was an Excel sheet of all the reentry services in Philadelphia, which they correlated and sent out, and we used it as a main hub for reentry in Philadelphia. Shortly after, we all know the pandemic hit, and the coalition took a huge plunge. Everything went digital. We no longer had in-person meetings, events, anything of that nature, and a lot of staff changes. So around 2020, we developed an online service hub in which we did the same thing. We shared all of our resources, but there was a disconnected membership, a disconnect in things and efforts being produced because we just weren't able to come together as effectively as before. So I came into the role officially like a year ago, October 30th, and at that time, the PRC had just kind of transitioned under the city of Philadelphia, becoming a city entity. We also got a new executive director for the Office of Reentry Partnership, and then we also had new members of the steering committee and chair and co-chair. So me coming in last year, exactly on October 30th, it was just literally a breath of fresh air. And we were picking everything up from the ashes. So I came into a slew of documents from 2019 and before, kind of just literally working myself and with Ms. Pam Superville, who should be here shortly. I call her historical almanac, because she literally knows everything about reentry like off the top of her head for the last 20 years. It's ridiculous. When you see her ask her question, I'm sure she'll know. But her and I just going through all the documentation, picking up where the old iteration left off and kind of rebuilding everything. So when I came in, there was really no membership. There hadn't been a meeting in over 2 years or a year and a half. No programming, no subcommittees, literally starting from the bottom. So since I came in, I'll say November of 2023, we had our first quarterly meeting in the last 2 years, and we had over 100 members show up just by emailing old members. So we had 100 members attending there. From there, in December, we started to develop our subcommittees into 5 working subcommittees. We got our first newsletter sent out. We created a logic model and a rough draft of a strategic plan. By January, we had started our recidivism study. We partnered with Temple University, so we began in talks of the framework of what that would look like. We even reached out to Mike for some assistance in creating some of those surveys and data as well. We started to develop promotional tools, so I thought it would be a good idea, because we had such a lack of membership, to get some promotional tools in order to entice people to come back and say, hey, we're here again. So we made flyers. I began to utilize more modern forms of communication like Slack, and so getting things like that so people could get more in touch and re-grounded into the coalition. By March, we had our first in-person meet and greet, in which 70 members attended. We had food, drinks. Charlotte and both Angie came out and spoke. We had a few other presenters come out. It was a really great turnout, so that was good news for us, only just being in operation for about 5 months. And then in April, as you know, is Second Chance Month. So normally, pretty much everybody who works in reentry will have an event or something during that time. We decided to do a reentry week. So during that week, we held a reentry simulation. We partnered with the U.S. District Attorney's Office. We had that. We had 2 grant writing workshops, because again, we were really focusing on our grassroots organization and sustaining our service providers. So the simulation was for PRC members only. It wasn't open to the general public. We wanted people who are providing these services to people coming home to have that experience if they didn't have it already. So we had that. We had 2 grant writing workshops, because oftentimes we find that a lot of organizations that are doing the work don't always have the capacity to sustain or the funding to sustain the work. So we want to make sure we're encouraging our members to get the skills in order to get the funding to maintain the work that they're doing within our community. And then we also had a training on vicarious trauma, Tara is here, she led that training. Just to remind us the importance of when working with people who have trauma, sometimes we do take that on and how that can affect us as service providers as well. So that was very great for us, and our members were very impacted and very thankful for that. Whew. So, present day, here we are. Membership. So now we have over 209 members in the coalition actively. We have 5 working subcommittees. That's housing, health, women's services, employment, and community engagement. And we have a fully stacked and working CJAC board, which is our Criminal Justice Advisory Council. And so those are our federal and criminal partners, Bureau of Prisons, DOC, District Attorney's Office, et cetera, et cetera. We meet with them quarterly in order to help influence our strategic plan and influence some of our efforts here in Philadelphia. Data, right now we're still currently working with our recidivism study and our researchers to develop that. We're using data from where they left off, 2019 up into 2022. We have a needs assessment survey going out right now throughout Philadelphia. We're trying to get people who are returning home or have a lived experience to exactly what it sounds like, tell us what they need, so that as we're doing programming and developing these ideas, we want to get direct things that affect the people that we're trying to serve instead of, coming from my experience, which I do not have. So that's currently going on. As far as cohesiveness, we meet regularly once a month with one in-person meeting each quarter. We host at least two or three events per quarter. And then each month we started doing a membership spotlight. So in order to keep our members motivated and encouraged, once a month in our newsletter and our meetings, we'll highlight an organization, let the people know what they're doing. Our newsletter has been around since its inception, so it goes out to over 780 stakeholders. And so they're able to be publicized, shown, and hopefully entice more people to buy into their organizations and support them as well. Another thing that we are doing right now, we are currently doing an updated resource hub. So we're asking our members to fill out a survey about their current organizations, what they're doing, the demographics as far as their zip codes, the population they're served, any limitations, how to apply, and all these things. And we're going to take this data, digitize it, and then create an urban map so that online anybody can go to it. It'll be a map of Philadelphia. You can click on it by zip code, be able to see what organizations are in their area, what services they provide, and their contact information. So we're hoping to have that finished by January 2025 and launch it. Some other upcoming events that we have planned for this end of this year and the beginning of next year. We will have a final meet and greet in December that will also serve as a drive for women who are coming home. So we're asking people who come to donate toiletries and non-perishable items so that we can deliver them to the shelters as kind of a holiday give back. So that will take place in December. In January, like I said, we're going to release that resource hub, and we're also going to release the data results from the needs assessment survey and kind of make the numbers into a story that we all can listen to and use in our respective organizations, and it will be sent out to the masses, if you will. We also have a collaboration with an organization called Women's Way, and they organized a podcast with 7 women who have a lived experience or justice impacted. So we'll be doing an event with them, partnering so the women can play some of the podcasts, have a Q&A, and again, to highlight the importance of women's services in reentry. I don't know if you know, but Black and brown women are being arrested at the highest rate currently to this day. So we really want to put an emphasis and a focus on that and support that population. We're going to be having a reentry roundtable with the governor's office. Someone reached out to me last year explaining that the governor has reentry pretty high on his priority list. And so we're going to create a concentrated roundtable with about 10 people, have a sit down from different areas of reentry, and just kind of let them know what the needs are and give them a scope of reentry in Philadelphia. And lastly, which is going to be a bigger project and probably take a lot more time, we want to get more involved behind the walls and in the prison because I believe that reentry starts beyond the walls. And so we're working on a reentry van, which was there before under the Office of Reentry Partnerships, so I should say bringing back, but the van will be stationed on a prison exit area. It'll be on site, and people who are coming home or coming out of prison, they will be able to come into the van, receive services, have a sit down, whether it's pamphlets, receive a backpack full of needs items, gift cards, whatever that's necessary, whatever that we can fund. It'll kind of be an immediate stop upon release that they can go to. So we're working on getting that back into play, as well as getting newsletters regularly sent into the prisons, whether it's to the social workers, directly onto the units, or however we have to get it done. Again, that has been done before as well. We're trying to bring it back and make it stronger. And then also as just as PRC or as a coalition, we want to host quarterly resource fairs inside the jails and prisons with just our members. And so all of our members we vet. We have 15 to 20-minute interviews just to talk to you, see who you are, and hopefully that you are who you say you are, right? A lot of people say, I'll provide this service and that service, but we want to make sure if we're putting you on this list or if we're inviting you to the fair and we're sending people to your organization, you'll be able to support them in the way that you say they are. So that's what we have upcoming. We've been doing a lot of great stuff in Philadelphia. I would be remiss to say that I'm doing it by myself. There's a leadership team and then some of my committee and chair members here as well. Maurice Jones Q, a lot of you may know him, he just left, but he is the current chair of the PRC. Donald Drinks, a lot of you probably know him as well, he is the co-chair. And Miss Pamela Somerville, she's not here right now, but she'll be here shortly. She is the deputy director, and so the four of us are on the leadership team. We have our advocacy chair here, Chris Jimenez, who is seated here, and also our housing chair and co-chair, Yola and Ms. Kim, who is also here. So it is not just a job done by myself. We have great support. We have great, strong people here in Reentry and Philadelphia. And last but not least, I was asked to talk about some of the pitfalls and challenges because it has not just been a smooth road. There are some challenges and pitfalls that we encounter, one being communication and consistency. And so this is unpaid work, right, to be in a coalition. You don't pay you to be here and come to meetings and give your resources and ideas and your time. So it's hard to ask people to dedicate certain things when they, one, work a 9 to 5. Some people have a 9 to 5 on top of having their side nonprofit. And so sometimes people fall off. They're in meetings 3 times a month and then you don't see them for another meeting. And so if you're counting on people to do certain things, it's hard to kind of build around that, or then I have to take on an extra task, which I do, no complaints here. But those are one of the things that is hard to gauge, right? Or somebody just stops responding to emails because they were out for a week, so it's hard. We appreciate everything that we get, but that is something that we have to work around and continuously work around. Funding and approvals. Because we are a city entity, we are very specific in how we can receive monies and give monies and what things we can put the city's name on, as I'm sure some of you know. And so that sometimes causes the conflicts because the coalition used to be its own entity, right? It wasn't a part of the city. So now that it's under the city, we have to move with a little bit more caution, a little bit more specificity. So those things sometimes can be a hindrance or figuring out how to best collaborate with certain organizations and get certain funding or give certain funding for certain things. So that is also a challenge for us. And lastly, just tradition versus new ideas. Like I said, I just came into the role last year. I've been working in criminal justice ever since I graduated. I went to Penn State for criminology and philosophy. I'm currently getting my master's in public policy. But this is my first year being on the reentry side of things. And so I'm just like a fresh bubble, like, oh, let's do this, I have this idea. And then you have people who have been in the field for 20 years, like, well, this is what works, this is what we've been doing. And so, yes, but there are also new approaches that we can take and new things that we can try out. So just finding that balance is not difficult, but it's something that needs to be addressed. And ultimately, we do find the best solution by incorporating both. So thank you for your time, and I hope to see you all later.
Morning, everybody. That's going to be a tough act to follow. Lots of great things happening in Philly. Can you hear me? Okay. My name's Alissa McBride, and I coordinate the Montgomery County Reentry Initiative called MCRI. And we actually started in 2017 in January as the Women's Reentry Initiative through a JAG grant through PCCD. And it was actually, I have been the coordinator since our inception, and I have to say it was the easiest thing I probably ever did to bring people together. It was kind of like shooting fish in a barrel, as my husband would say. It was so many different organizations, individuals who were working in reentry as a silo, and were so eager to come together and see what actually existed. Because even though we all were doing reentry work either behind the walls or in the community, things emerge and things go away very quickly. So just trying to figure out who was doing what and how we could close those gaps. Bringing people together was extremely easy. People were very eager. What we found pretty quickly was most of us were serving all individuals returning to the community. So even though we started as the Women's Reentry Initiative and we never stopped focusing on the individualized needs of women, in 2019 we voted to become the Montgomery County Reentry Initiative, serving all persons coming back to Montgomery County. We have over 150 members. Our meetings are always jam-packed. It's a joke with my little team that I never want to put out too many chairs and tables because I never want to see empty seats. And then we always have to drag more chairs and tables out of the back as the meetings start, and they get so mad at me. But I just can never believe from one quarter to the next that so many people are still going to be engaged. And we have the same issue that you were talking about is we're not funded. Our coalition, we never have been. So we did get strategic planning grants, but the coordinator position, none of the leadership team, none of the work that we do is funded. And everybody is being pushed and pulled from so many different directions. People are busier than they've ever been. So even though we do have organizations that have funding to do certain projects, so we may have funding to do a program inside or case management in and out, it comes and it goes, and people are so busy that I'm always worried that we're going to lose our momentum. But so far, people have hung in and they've stuck with us. So what we do to decide what direction that we're going to move forward, and I'm going to be quick because I know you all are coming. I brought our strategic plan. There's extra copies on the table over there. But we do a comprehensive risk and needs assessment every 3 years. We base it on the Wisconsin model, which is an evidence-based model, and we've added different questions based on what's going on. Some of the things we've added more recently are mental health diagnosis, drug and alcohol treatment needs, personal ID needs, language barriers, family reunification. So we have this survey that we gave at Montgomery County Correctional Facility. We just re-gave it with a grant through PCCD in March, and at the time there were 905 individuals who were incarcerated at MCCF, and 890 completed the assessment. So that was really, and part of it was because of our grant through PCCD. We had incentives. We did a kind of a public interest campaign because a lot of us are in there doing programs at MCCF and doing case management. So we really let people know your voice counts. It's not just about what people in suits think you need when you come out. It's what you think you need when you come out. And we had the commissary through PCCD that money to thank people for taking their time and giving their expertise to complete the survey. We also do a key stakeholder survey for individuals that are in the community with a high emphasis on individuals with lived experience in the criminal justice system who've come home to say, what was it like for you when you came out? What did you need? In addition to people who serve reentrants. And we use all that information every 3 years to decide what are we going to focus our efforts on. Because it's an irony that I've been put in charge of meetings because I really don't like meetings. I like doing and I don't like talking. So we take all that data and we form action teams. And our action teams work hard. We meet regularly, we have tasks and goals, and we base what our 5 action teams are on the data that we get from our strategic planning and our risk and needs assessments. So they've changed, because I've told you we've done 4 risk and needs assessments since 2017. And if I had more time, I'd see if I could get you to guess what individuals returning to the community say they need most. But we don't have time, so I'm just going to tell you. As you can guess, it's probably housing. Housing is number 1. We used to call it gaining and maintaining employment, but we've changed that action team to career development because we want an emphasis on people having a career in an area where it pays a living wage and it's an area of their interest, not just getting any job you can get and keeping your job. Accessing timely mental health medication and drug and alcohol services post-release, parenting and childcare, and our newest one, which is natural supports. And interestingly enough, and I think I was telling the lovely folks at my table, this year it was interesting when we got the survey results back, because pretty much neck and neck with housing, the number one identified need was being connected to spiritual opportunities post-release. So that was new, and it was different than what we've seen in the past. So again, we have 150 members, we have a website, we have our community guide for reentrance that's digital and hard copy that we're always trying to keep updated, letting everyone know this is what we have. This is what's going on, and trying to work together collaboratively to keep people from falling through the cracks. I'm not a big fan of cliches, but warm handoff I do think is a cliche that's worth keeping. We try to communicate with each other, and when I call you and say, hey, Charlotte's going to be calling, she needs housing, I gave her your name, this is what's going on with her, instead of just handing people a resource guide and saying, sorry, Family Services doesn't do this, good luck. So we really try to close those gaps, but even trying to close those gaps, we know that there's some things none of us do. There are a lot of gaps. So one of the things we try to do a lot of is identifying what are the funding opportunities that can fill those gaps and helping each other achieve them. So instead of Family Services wants all the reentry money, I may know Charla, her agency specializes in housing. So as a coordinator, I see a grant coming through that I think would be great for Charla, so I reach out to her. Coalition members do letters of support. We all rally around Charla to try to see if her organization can meet this need and fill this gap. So some of the grants that we have received that we're very proud of that have made a difference is we had a Second Chance Act grant to get tele-intakes and telecounseling in Montgomery County Correctional Facility, because what we were seeing happen was people were returning to the community who were on medication and had mental health needs, and it was taking about 6 months to get back up and running on the wait list for their community behavioral health center. And by that time, self-medication, recidivism was occurring. So through our Second Chance Act grant, we had a year of planning right before the pandemic, and we launched right at the beginning of the pandemic, so I can feel your pain. And all of our planning went out the window, and we had to revamp and pivot all over again. But we did, and what we did end up having is we met our numbers of individuals being connected to tele-intake and counseling while they were in. They had a case manager while they were in, and their case manager and their counselor made sure immediately upon release they would hit the ground running, getting their appointment scheduled before they get out, having their appointment within 2 days of getting out, having their medication, no interruption of medication. So we did that for 3 years during the pandemic, and I'm very happy to say that even though that grant just ended, it's being sustained by the Office of Mental Health, is continuing to provide the tele-intake and counseling in kind. Montgomery County Correctional Facility is continuing to arrange for those connections with their reentry coordinator, and Family Services is continuing to provide the case management. So even though nobody got any more money to do it, everyone saw that this worked, that it made a difference, and it's continuing. We've also had a couple of Restart housing grants through PCCD. We just got a new one through HUD to try to assist individuals who remain incarcerated at Montgomery County Correctional Facility beyond their minimum release date solely due to a lack of home plan, which sadly was happening quite a bit, particularly with people with mental health concerns. So those are a couple of, we just recently, our Montgomery County Office of Drug and Alcohol is using opioid relief money and just released an RFP, and we don't know which collaborative member will be doing this, but I'm sure it will be someone who's involved in the Montgomery County Correctional Reentry Initiative to get 2 certified recovery specialists in Montgomery County Correctional Facility working with individuals pre-release and continuing post-release. So we're trying to, again, not only work with what we have and close those gaps, but identify the gaps and continue to find things that are going to fill them. And again, yes, we are certified through we've met PCCD's minimum operating standards a couple of times now, and it's not that hard. I was told to encourage you to do it. It really isn't hard. It doesn't take that much time. You already have your membership list. I'm sure all of your coalitions already have representation from a lot of different sectors. If you have a positive relationship with your correctional facility, which we're very fortunate that we do, you get a letter saying what they're collecting, very easy, your bylaws. So I encourage you, if you haven't done that already, do it, because it legitimizes the work that we do and allows us to continue. And I think I'm going to turn it over to my colleague. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Steve Guccini. I'm from Pike County, although full disclosure, I recently moved to the adjoining county. But anyway, I'm the person who kind of started the Pike County Coalition, and I am a Pike County native. I lived there all my life. So I want to tell you just a little bit about myself, only because I think it's important that you have to get a couple core people if you're from a rural county, and most of Pennsylvania is rural. Pike County is a 6th-class county. We have a total population of 58,000 people, which is like miraculous. When I came back there from law school in 1979, the 1980 census had us at 18,000 people. So we're a very rural county, and you need some key people to get things started. So I like to tell people I'm a recovering lawyer of 40 years, and recovering is the correct term. After I retired from that, I ran for county commissioner, and I was a county commissioner for 6 years. And my legal practice, it was very general because of where I'm from, but very early on in 1980, I almost fell into, by accident, becoming an assistant district attorney. I had no interest in being in a courtroom ever. It scared the hell out of me. And all of a sudden I'm trying cases, and within 6 months of becoming an assistant district attorney and making $8,000 a year, not making this up, we had 3 murder cases. And then I did that for 13 or 14 years, and I switched gears and I went to the defense side. I became a public defender and did a lot of private criminal stuff. So the only reason I'm telling you that is I also was represented our Children and Youth Agency for 4 years and was a guardian ad litem for kids for like 13 years. Now, if you do the math, yes, it's all true. I'm 72 years old. But the reason I'm telling you that is, people used to always ask me, what kind of law do you do? I said, well, that's easy. Whatever is depressing and not financially rewarding is what I do. But I had this background. And so when this whole idea of reentry, when I was reading about it, because I didn't know a lot about it, it was like, yeah, we need this, and I can do this. So I was very fortunate to be put in touch with a fellow by the name of Hampton Morgan, who was already running some programs in our correctional facility, and also on the outside. And actually, Hampton would probably be here today instead of me, except he's in D.C. visiting family. But Hampton is just a whirlwind and was wonderful in helping me get this organized. So I think the first thing you need to do is, if you are in a rural county, you don't have a reentry coalition, is you need to educate yourself. You need to find out what it is. What do these coalitions do? In my case, Pike County is in the far northeast corner of the state. We border on Philadelphia, New York. In fact, the county seat of Milford is literally a mile across the Delaware River from New York and New Jersey. But we're also fairly close to Lackawanna County. So they had a coalition, so I just went to a meeting and started asking questions. That was before I was a county commissioner. When I became a county commissioner, I knew that Carbon County had recently had one approved, and we worked very closely with their commissioners, so I went to one of their meetings and just started asking questions. So you really, however you choose to do it, you need to find out how these things work, because a lot of people don't know. Once you do that, and once you feel you can speak intelligently on something, because it's important to do that, you can't just go, You need to tell people what they do. You need to be able to answer questions, all right? So you need to start getting players on board. And I think in a rural county, and maybe everywhere, those players include the county commissioners, and I was one, so that was easier. The probation department, the district attorney's office, because that you need to get CJAD, mental health, drug and alcohol, the public defender's office, any private lawyers who do a lot of criminal work, and there are others, but the most important one is the correctional facility. You know, we were very, very fortunate. Our correctional facility, the warden of our correctional facility, who's been there for a long time, is one of the most forward-thinking human beings I've ever met. And the cell to him wasn't even a cell, it was just easy. It was just like, well, of course we'll do that. And they were already running programs. They had a lot of programs they already had up and running. But you need to get them on board, because sometimes that's going to be a harder sell. And then you need to hire somebody to help get you going. You can't do this yourself. So we got a grant, the PCCD grant, to hire a consultant. We hired Melanie Snyder. Probably everybody in this room knows her. She is a force of nature. And we had this core group of people together. And then as while we were waiting for this grant, we reached out to more members of the community. I can talk about that in a minute. So we had a fairly large working group of people. And when Melanie came on board, the first thing she did, even before she started coming to our meetings to help us put this together, she went to the correctional facility and she found out all the programs they were already doing. And she couldn't have been more complimentary of, well, like, I'm 50% ahead of where I usually am in these things, because you guys are already doing this. So that was a big help, but you're not always going to be in that position. So the idea of getting a consultant, again, having been in county government, commissioners love this. Oh, you're going to do this, we think it's a good idea, and it's not going to cost us any money. That's like really important. It's all about the budget, all right? Counties, their revenue is almost exclusively real estate taxes in rural counties. They never have any money. So the idea that you're not going to cost them anything is a big deal. Now, in my case, the commissioners were all on board. If we would have had to pay for the consultant ourselves, they would have done it. But the idea that you're getting a grant and it's not costing them any money is really important. So while we were waiting for the grant, while we were waiting for Melanie, we started getting other people on board. So we already talked about the agencies and the political leaders, but you really need to get everybody else, because that's really the core of what you do. Pike County is in the Poconos. We are a very tourist-oriented area. And there's a whole bunch of employers, some fairly large employers, who can never get enough people to work. They just can't. It was a problem 7 or 8 years ago. It still is. So employers, regardless of what their political outlook is, we're all in favor of this. Sure, we'll come to your meetings, we'll become members, because this is important to us. You have to get faith-based organizations. Very important, because they add so much to your coalition. They're willing to work. So you need to reach out to all the faith-based organizations in your county. Obviously, you need to get returning citizens. And that's where you can have help by having this really close association with your correctional facility. So you need to figure out any other people, citizens, that are specific to your county. Maybe there's some things going on in your county. Certain employers, as I said, in our case it was the tourist industry, it still is. But in your county there may be other manufacturing plants or whatever. You need to be specific to your county as to who you're reaching out to. So we had done all that and had all that in place before Melanie showed up. She came in. We had, I forget how many meetings with her, 6 or 7. We put together a strategic plan. We got that plan approved by PCCD and our local CJAB, and we've had monthly meetings ever since then. Now, in full disclosure, I recently resigned as a co-chairman, one of the co-chairmen of our coalition, because our bylaws, which we have, said I had, I could no longer be there. I was there too long. And even if they didn't say that, I would have resigned, because you always want to get a turnover and always have new blood coming in. And one of the ways you can do that is one of our committees. We actually have a public relations outreach committee. You just need somebody who has that experience in public relations to always put information out there that, hey, there is this thing called the Reentry Coalition. Come to our meetings. We continue to have meetings once a month. We're currently, our initial plan was approved in 2019, I think. And we're currently working on getting a new strategic plan, updating that plan. But we continue to have monthly meetings. The enthusiasm is still there. We still get large turnouts. Even during COVID, when we were doing everything online, we still had large turnouts. Since then, we've continued to have online and in-person, your choice. I voted for in-person only. I'm old. I like people in the room that you can see. But on the other hand, I'm now retired and I don't have a job, so I get that people sometimes can only do it online. I like to tell people I now have no responsibility whatsoever, which, when you get there, if most of you aren't there, it's a pretty good deal. You really need this public outreach. I mean, one of the things that we did right after we got our plan approved, the correctional facility staff agreed to put on a big barbecue. They did all the cooking, they supplied all the food, we had giant tents, and we just invited anybody who wanted to come there. And the correctional facility is in the geographic middle of the county, so it worked out good for people. And we had a massive turnout. And we just told them what we were doing. So people will buy into this, but you need to continually tell them that we have this and it's out there. I guess the last thing is, or next to the last thing, as a trial lawyer of 40 years, maybe there's never a last thing, I don't know. But anyway, as you work through your plan in your meetings over the years, the idea of what was in your plan originally is going to change. Because as more and more people come to your meetings and they tell you about their concerns, about when re-entering citizens tell you about their concerns, you realize, as much work as you put into it in the beginning, you realize that, I didn't really understand all of it. And so your plan's going to change. Some of it's going to remain the same, but some of it's going to change. Right now, we are working on a project, and it's a major project, and I'm not at liberty to tell you about it because I might spoil things for the people who need to approve it. But the idea is that this may be the only thing we work on for the next 5 years, because it's going to take 5 years to put together. So don't be afraid to change what you thought was real that may now require other things. And the last thing I wanted to say was, the earlier presentation before we all came up here about reentry needs to be better, but there was, and why isn't it 100% recidivism rate, or 0%, I guess I should say, I'm setting it the wrong way. But there was also a story about, this is my individual story and this is how it works. This work is about small steps. I don't know of any other way that you can measure success, to be honest with you. Because a lot of folks you deal with are going to fail. That's just a fact. Maybe not, and maybe after 2 or 3 times they'll succeed. But a lot of them are going to fail. But some of them are going to succeed. So it really is about small success stories. Sometimes the public doesn't think that if they see, well, these 10 people are back in jail, so what are you guys doing? we have to tell them about the 3 or 4 who aren't and are just out there doing remarkable things in the community now. So you can't get discouraged. It is about small steps. And I think it's really important, if you're from a rural county, because that's most of Pennsylvania geographically, that you try to put one of these things together. It's incredibly rewarding. I think you'll get more, sometimes people think about you're coming from a conservative political environment, and that's true, but I think you'll get more buy-in than you thought, and it's as I said, remarkably rewarding to do it. So give it a shot. What's the worst that can happen? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name's Laura Kuykendall, and I'm from Lehigh County. Allentown is actually the 3rd largest city in PA, and our jail average daily pop is between 825, 850 on a daily basis. That was in 2023. Average length of stay is about 66 days. So I just wanted to put that out there to just give you an idea of the size that we're dealing with. So I have it very easy, and so I feel like I can stand up here and say, oh, this is so easy to do this, but I just wanted to give you a story of my background in regards to how I move forward with this. So in Lehigh County, our Criminal Justice Advisory Board already had a reentry subcommittee, and that started back in 2005. So essentially the groundwork for a reentry coalition was already established. It was already done. I was a member of the reentry subcommittee for many years, and eventually, it was about 2014 where I began to chair that subcommittee. And so the majority of the members were county professionals, so representation from adult probation, court administration, the jail, adult probation, and we had a few nonprofit organizations that had contracts with the jail or even with adult probation providing services. And so those meetings were held on every other month, the even months of every year, the first Thursday, and they've done that since it started. Very easy. And so it wasn't until the pandemic for me, and I've actually never shared this story with anyone, but when Eric was sharing his story and he had said, how does this make sense? Like, I am here, I pay $30 a day to come here and talk to you about reentry. Like, how does that make sense? The pandemic was my driving force, because every day the DA, probation, the jail, we were going through all the inmates, and we were trying to get people out of the jail, to get them out of to be safe. But unfortunately, think back and it's like, all right, you're throwing these individuals who have maybe been in jail 6-7 months, or maybe even 30 days, but they are getting granted immediate parole, and they're going out in the middle of a pandemic with no jobs. But let's get them out of the jail. And it's like, how does that make sense? I get it, but looking back, it's like, I don't know about that. So I voiced my concerns at a reentry subcommittee meeting saying, hey, like, we don't have these organizations going into the jail anymore. And if they're not making those connections and they're not going out in the community because these organizations are shut down, how are we helping these people? Because they're really just going into, it was dangerous for them, really. I went into work the next day, and there was a voicemail for me. I have caller ID, so I know who it was. But the voice message was, shut up, do what you're told, or else you will have the blood of your inmates on your hands. That was the message I got. So at that time, I was like, you can put your money where your mouth is. And I called Charla. And I was like, we need to do this coalition, because I have these organizations that want to help. I have organizations that are receiving reentry monies that are not doing anything. So how can we hold these organizations accountable, but bring on one to say, like, hey, let's come together and let's work together. It can't be an us versus them, we versus you, like county, community. We really do have to work together. In Lehigh County, we have a lot of organizations going into the jail. We really do, and it's great. And even with the coalition and our meetings, we have committed members that are working together to do that. And so I began going to PARC, and I don't probably when it started. So, I heard stories of the process. And Mike, the chair of Bucks County Coalition, had just presented at a PARC meeting. And so I had reached out to him and I said, hey, how do we do this? And he's like, Laura, it is so easy. This is all we did. I'm like, what? And then Charlotte had connected me with Catherine Kilgore from Dauphin County and Melanie Snyder, who was a consultant who went through the process. They so kindly scheduled a Zoom with me, went over the process. I'm like, this is really easy. So I then went to the chairs of our CJAB and I said, hey, look, I would like to do this. We need to work together. We need to have, reentrants be a part of this, because I can't say, hey, they need more. I work for, side note, I should have said this, I am the warden of the work release for Lehigh County Jail. So it's a 400-bed facility. So I left that out when I said I got the voicemail, which is an important piece of information, sorry. And so corrections is a very difficult job. It's not very rewarding, and it's very, very difficult. And even during the pandemic, when, the officers, were taking individuals to court, the courthouse was shut down, we're doing it via Zoom, we're face to face with COVID positive people, it's a very scary situation. And so when we went through the process, I went to the chairs of CJAB and they gave me their full support and they said, let's do it. So I'm like, all right. I had reached out to Michael Leister because I said, we're going to do this. There was a grant. I don't remember what it was for. And he suggested, hold off, because in a few months we're going to get another announcement and it's strategic planning specific. So I went back. I said, they told me to hold off. They said, all right, we'll just hold off. I then applied for the grant. It was very easy. We got the grant. I ended up hiring Melanie as our consultant to go through the process. 6 months, she laid it all out, a meeting once a month. It was held via Zoom. She had breakout sessions where you're still networking, and it was a enjoyable process. It was very, very simple. And as we were operating and our reentry subcommittee prior to this process, we fell under the umbrella of CJAB, and so we had a strategic plan. And it wasn't until I had a conversation with Charlotte until she broke it down, very, very simple. Strategic plan, reentry specific, but you are having community partners, county professionals, and our reentrants, that's key, working together to develop this plan. So it's not the county just saying, yep, we need this, this, and this. You are hearing it from the individuals who are doing the work, the frontline workers, right? And so that is the key part of that. And so when I explained that to CJAB, it was, okay, all right, get it. So we went through the process, and it was very easy. So I am one of the co-chairs of the coalition. My other co-chair is a director of forensic services for a nonprofit that offers programming, and they go into the jail. And so even I went to CJAB to have both county and community represented for the coalition. I nominated her to be a member of CJAB, welcomed her, no issues. And so our coalition is equally represented on CJAB. We finished the process in December. CJAB approved the reentry strategic plan in January. In April, we held a launch event at Muhlenberg College. That was fantastic. Did it with $0, just with our community partners. We are working on reentry resources to get a guide of organizations and whatnot to help reentrants when they need assistance, food, whatnot. Just an easy guide to go through. And so, if there's anything you take from this, really, I just want everyone to know. No one, every single person that I reached out to throughout this entire process, no one ever said to me, I don't have time to talk to you. And everyone I talked to was so kind, and they were all through PARC. And so, and you know, when we had PARC when we met in person prior to the pandemic, I was a fan of doing in-person meetings too, and I had met the chair of the Northampton County Coalition. And so what's neat about that is he is now a member of the Lehigh County Coalition. I am a member of the Northampton County Coalition. We're neighboring counties. Let's work together. And so don't hesitate to reach out and ask and network and get some information, because I can tell you personally firsthand that I was never ignored, and everyone always gave me their time, and I never felt unsupported. And that's really just what I want to share and make known, is that we are a room full of people that are doing the work. Just ask for help. And so that's it.
Well, Rob's going to tell me to wrap it up here. Unfortunately, I don't think we have any time for questions, but I'd encourage you during any breaks, during lunch, come see myself, Angie, any of our wonderful panelists. If we could just get another round of applause for everyone. That would be great.
So that was a beautiful segue to say that your break is 20 seconds, so you can communicate by telepathy with the great presenters from the counties. And again, thank you. I just want to say one thing, because I do want to take a very short break, because we've got a great presentation coming up. It involves watching films and not hearing people speak. But I want to just thank two people who I haven't thanked before, and it's Michael Leister and Angi Crater. They are from PCCD, and you know, Michael had the difficult job of succeeding Charla, and then Angi succeeded Michael, and yet the three of them are the three musketeers, and they're all phenomenal, and they're just great people. They're great people who work hard and are totally committed to reentry. So thank you, Mike, and thank you, Angi. And thank you, Angi. And thank you, Angi. And thank you, Angi. And thank you, Angi.